We are back on the road to Wrestlemania, sort of. But we're here to make it still feel like Mania season, going retro once again. It's been a minute, but it's good to be back doing the retro roundup right here. Union Smack is back. The Smack is back, Matt's new favorite catchphrase. Speaking of Matt, what's going on, man? My co-host, how you been? Where can everyone catch you?
Going stir crazy, Travis, in these lockdown times, but you can find me, as always, on Twitter at ThePerfectTenant. You can buy our online merchandise from unionsmack.bigcartel.com. That is all our official t-shirts, and, of course, to get you through the long days in isolation or quarantine or lockdown or whatever you prefer to call it, you can purchase my Undertaker book, A Trip Down Death Valley, from completelynovel.com.
And at this point, guys, when you pick up the book, take your time reading it, because we could be here for a while.
Yeah, it's a big book, so it should see you through.
Yeah. Hopefully. And as always on Twitter, at the Hibiki TMD, while you're cooped up, give me a follow over there and hit that red subscribe button right down below for all the goodness. You know the drill. ProWrestlingJournal.com. Thank you for featuring us over there. All the great writers. Man, get over there, check them out. Very underrated. And they cover pretty much every promotion in pro wrestling. And like Matt said, unionsmack.bigcartel.com. Get a shirt, get a book, do it now. I am so glad to be doing this show. This is one of my favorite Manias, one I've watched the most. I literally wore the VHS out of this when I was a teenager, and it's just, I love that we're doing this to get our minds off the shit state of the world right now. WrestleMania 14, my God.
Yeah, and I think we need to do more retros off the back of this as well, Travis, especially now we've got so much time on our hands.
You guys have missed them. I've had a couple of you guys ask when we're going retro again. Ask, you shall receive. We're here. We've just been so consistent keeping up on NXT UK. It's hard to please everyone, but we'll do our best.
Yes, we'll do our best. Now we're locked in and can't do anything, then, you know, we might as well yield to public demand, Travis, and give, you know, I was going to give our roadies what they want, but yeah.
Let's get right into it. Let's just say four numbers that pretty much sum it up. 1998. You talk about, and this was the first WrestleMania in a long time where it felt like a complete facelift, just the look of it. Obviously, the winds of change were already blown. We were going in a totally different direction now. The gloves were off. The cusp of just kicking the shit out of WCW was coming in about, 2 weeks? They would win in the ratings for the first time in 83 weeks. Just the Steve Austin Harbinger, everything summed up in a pay-per-view right here. Just the genesis, for the most part, of Austin's run, and just off to the races they went, man.
Yep, this was literally the march to the main event for Steve Austin. The crowning of a new star, the crowning of a new champion, and, you know, every bit of it, I say every bit of it, every bit of the Austin Michaels part of this just felt like something absolutely special. And it's something that we hadn't felt in years. Yeah. Like, literally years.
And I think having a guy like Mike Tyson helps get new eyes on it for sure.
Yes.
This was also, they started like putting little underscore catchphrases for their pay-per-views. This was technically called WrestleMania X-rated, but it's spelled like rated, like R-A-I-D. I didn't like that at all at the time. I was, even though I was all about a change in the Attitude Era, in my heart and as a teenager, I was still a purist. I didn't want a little tagline on my WrestleMania. Just call it fucking WrestleMania and a number. That's it.
I mean, I liked that they tried to, you know, delve away from what they'd done. Like you said, this was a complete facelift, so giving it a little catchphrase was fine for me. Didn't they do it with WrestleMania 13 as well?
Feel the heat.
I think
yeah.
It was.
Yep. It's so sad we know that, like, boom, off the top of our head, we're simultaneously. Feel the heat.
So it didn't bother me. But, I mean, X-rated, it's like, not really. You could have come up with something better than that.
Bait and switch much? I mean, now, on paper, this took place from Boston, by the way. Red hot crowd. My God. Shout out to the Boston crowd. On paper, like, the first two matches look like complete waste of time and dog shit, but going back, really wasn't that bad. I was surprised that they held up for me.
Yeah.
The Battle Royal, I mean, it was just every other Battle Royal, you know?
I mean, to be honest, it's like, I didn't really... I'm going to say I didn't really pay that much attention to what was going on in the ring. More, I was picking out wrestlers that I just completely forgot was still around in 1998, like a ponytailed Flash Funk, you know, who just looked like physically looked like the shits, didn't they, in 1998?
Who, shout out to him, like gave out some award later on when they were showing FanFest footage. I don't know what that was about.
Yeah. Didn't he look thrilled to be there?
Imagine winning a contest as a kid, like you bust your ass to write some essay and it's Flash Funk you get to meet.
The disappointment, Travis.
Yeah. It's crazy, too, the amount of, like, future world champions in this Battle Royal. Like, at the time, nobody would have thought they'd ever say that.
Yep, yeah, like JBL in there. Do you know what? I completely forgot that Barry Windham was around in 98, because this was after the New Blackjacks broke up. Oh,
the good old...
so many.
The good old NWA invasion was happening, and it went over like a wet fart in church.
Yes, Bodacious Bob and Hardcore Holly. I forgot what they...
Bombastic Bob and Bodacious Bart or something?
That's the one, yeah. That's the one.
They went to Broadway in this.
Is it bad? They did. Is it bad? I quite like the new Midnight Express.
Oh, yeah. Because, I can't even defend that. I'm sorry. Now, if you would have called them anything else and they had Jim Cornette as their mouthpiece, maybe I got something to work with.
I mean, I see what they were trying to do. You know, the NWA connection, Midnight Express, Jim Cornette, etc. But yeah, I mean, saddling them with an old name and just, you know, tagging the word new on the beginning didn't really help them a lot. I mean, you had like the Rock and Roll Express in there as well.
Yeah.
And I think it stood out that you were trying to repackage a classic team with less than capable elements.
Let's try to explain this too for a lot of people that are younger and weren't watching when this went down live. No one was asking for that kind of wrestling anymore. Don't ever get confused with that. At least I wasn't. My friends weren't. No one was looking for old 80s NWA. It was all about realism, ECW, attitude, pal. It's why WCW was failing, because they were becoming that old, tired bullshit of dusty finishes and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. You know?
Yeah, completely agree. I think, I don't know, there was something about having the Rock and Roll Express there that didn't fit, and, you know, having Jeff Jarrett there, who, correct me, did he come in with the NWA title?
He did, yeah. No, wait, it was the NWA North American title. It wasn't even the world title. He was like the...
Christ almighty.
Yeah.
He couldn't even muster up the world title.
Do you remember his awful narcissist Lex Luger ripoff music he had?
Yes.
What the fuck was that?
Thankfully, fuck knows, but thankfully they, you know, had his old classic here when he... No, they didn't. Sorry. So I'll tell you what it is. I literally last night watched WrestleMania 11, and it was Jeff Jarrett and Pamela Anderson introducing Shawn Michaels and Diesel.
First of all, Matt, why would you do that to yourself? It's not like we have a show with that planned. You did that in your own free will. Like,
I know. It's like a glutton for punishment.
My God. Tip of the hat, man. You are a trooper. No, we would get some real Jeff Jarrett later on in the show, not that weird NWA shit. Mark Henry, a confused Mark Henry, by the way, who forgot that his partner was eliminated, was also in this match, speaking of future world champs. Brian Lee, Chains. You had fucking Savio Vega, who got eliminated in like 30 seconds. I was actually kind of shocked because I figured like Scott Taylor or Brian Christopher would, if anyone. But they went longer than Savio, who just main evented the month before at No Way Out with DX.
Yes. Do you know what? Totally forgot about that. But yep, you're right there. And of course, fucking Legion of Doom.
Yep.
And we're not talking about classic 91 Legion of Doom. We're talking about tired, old, lost their physique, all muscle power, Legion of Doom.
I gotta be honest.
The only thing good...
Go on. No, you finish.
I was going to say, the only good thing about Legion of Doom in this was Sunday, because as skanky as she is now, she was absolutely smoking.
Oh, yeah. Perfect specimen. When this happened live, I actually like this because if you remember storyline-wise, this is after the New Age Outlaws and DX kind of took out the LOD and they went away for a couple months. This was they weren't advertised on the show. It was a surprise. I thought, I'll come completely honest with you. I thought it was badass looking at first. This was, I was like, oh, cool, they're badass again because they've been kind of talking about in storyline, calling them old and relics and shit like that. I was like, oh, they freshened them up. Even 14-year-old me got it. Like, okay, cool, they have an edge. Then I saw him the next night on Raw and it was all downhill from there. This was like the only time I had any hope for the gimmick was this night. Because after this, it just completely shut the bed.
Yeah, agree. And do you know what? I don't think putting them over a new young team. I mean, I'm going to stick by the new Midnight Express, but I didn't like that they basically fed them to the Legion of Doom in this. I thought if you're going to get a heel team over, have them beat Legion of Doom any which way you want, but have them beat them at WrestleMania, be the last team standing, etc., etc. I didn't obviously like that. And do you know what the other thing I hated about this, Travis?
That the
messiness, because all battle royals.
Was it the fact that the first ever African American heavyweight champion in history was in the battle royal like he was a piece of shit and nothing?
No, it wasn't.
Oh, okay.
It was the fact that what they why. Mix my words up again. I'll take a deep breath and restart. It was the fact that what they were fighting for was a title shot on the B-level pay-per-view.
Yeah. Not even later in the show. Like, I think the next year at Mania, right, they had a battle royal on the pre-show and Test and D'Lo Brown won. Then they got the shot later that night. Not next month.
That's it. And no one's really Wrestlemania. This is your biggest audience of the year. So, and what do you do? Well, the winner of this big kick-off match at WrestleMania, they'll go to next month's pay-per-view. So you're going to have to watch next month to see how old Legion of Doom do in their tag team title match.
Next month's pay-per-view, Forgiven. Sorry, Jim Ross, it's Unforgiven. Did you catch that little botch by JR?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. And was I the only one? Because we've never really gone into an In Your House on these reps, which I think we must do at some point. Was I the only one really put off by the fact that they'd changed the In Your House to the fact that they put the title first and then In Your House after, like Unforgiven In Your House?
I was actually kind of thankful that they just kind of transitioned out In Your House altogether because In Your House gave me bad 95 Todd Pettengill vibes. Like, ugh. Like, the sooner forgotten, the better.
How dare you?
Plus, originally, in my opinion, too, this was the time where the WWE was coming up with some creative-ass names for the shows. Like, Backlash was an awesome name. You know what I mean? It was so simple, yet it was a month after, you know.
I mean, going to one, single name pay-per-view is fine, but drop the In Your House from it.
Yeah.
Because then it made it seem like an afterthought. And obviously, In Your House in 1998 didn't fit with the Attitude Era.
Not at all. LOD gets the win, dumping out Midnight Express last. It was pretty obvious who was going to win. There was literally no other credible tag team, in my opinion, in this match, period. Maybe the Nation, but these were literally all job teams. Every one of them.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I'm trying to think of it. I didn't write a list of who was in it, so, my mind's now racing back to who was, but you're right.
We totally forgot that Kurgan did a run-in to eliminate Steve Blackman to segue into their red-hot feud that I don't even think happened. So
I don't even remember Kurgan versus Steve Blackman on any Raw or kick-off show on the pay-per-view or anything.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
In fact, we can all be thankful for it.
Was it Gennifer Flowers and The Rock up next?
No, it was footage of the DX public workouts.
This was I love this public workout. I think it's on the Hidden Gem section. This is the one where Shawn Michaels got pissed and left because some fan hit him in the head with like a D battery. That had to hurt like shit.
I'm just imagining him standing in the ring and this fucking battery going smacking him on the head.
Oh, it's on. They captured the whole thing. It's there. If you want to find it bad enough, the footage is there. And I love when Tyson and Michaels kissed Austin's head. It was amazing.
Yes. It was. We'll go into the build for Austin Michaels later on, but yeah, that was very, very good. And then this transitioned into a whole week's worth of WrestleMania events, seemingly. Like Austin on Regis and Kelly. No, Regis. Do you know what? I don't know your fucking show names over there, so you have to forgive my.
Technically, this was the era of Regis and Kelly because Kathy Lee took her ball and went home or some shit. I don't know.
See? So I won't feel so bad for being wrong. Kids Company and some bar with Mark Moreau and Sable.
But could they look like they were any more agitated that they were having their dinner interrupted? Christ.
Oh, God.
And then the Medal of Honor award from Flash Funk to some kid.
Yeah, and neither looked like they wanted to be there, and the kid just looked at him as if to say, "Who are you? You're not The Rock."
It looked like a prison photo, and this is your award. It looked like a goddamn fucking lineup. Like they you're right. They didn't want to be anywhere else but there. Jesus Christ, it was so bad.
Lineup. Oh dear. But thankfully, go on.
No, I was just going to segue it to where we went next, but you probably know better than I do. You usually do.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, that took us into the WWF Light Heavyweight Championship match. Taka Michinoku versus Aguila, or Aguila, however you want to pronounce it, if it's Spanish.
The future S.A. Rios, correct?
Yes. You're probably going to say you really like this match.
It was a watered-down New Japan match. They didn't get enough time. For the reason these guys were signed in the first place, this isn't how you showcase them. I wasn't a huge fan of the match. I feel like it was completely rushed.
Oh, same here. Glad we agree.
But Matt, on paper, it looks like it would be way worse than it really was. Just saying.
Yeah. I didn't mind it when they were flying about and, doing that bit. But in between that, it just seemed like they'd either run out of ideas or didn't really know what the American audience wanted them to do, because they reacted well to the high-flying stuff, didn't react so well to the technical ground and pound stuff.
Yeah.
It was a match of, two halves for me.
I don't know why the WWF at the time even bothered to compete with WCW's Cruiserweight division, because they had the monopoly on all the talent. I mean, WWF, as talented as Taka and Aguila were, or S.A. Rios, the WWE had to settle for scraps. Because for every Taka, there was a Devon Storm and you know what I mean? It wasn't a good light heavyweight division. Yeah. And this didn't even really get over at the time. I never remember anyone really giving a shit about Taka Michinoku. And it was always weird to me, and I noticed it on this. They really tried to play off Taka as a ladies' man, because on his entrance, they'd show every attractive young lady in the crowd for some reason. Just for him, too, during this.
If there's one man that I wouldn't associate with being a ladies' man, it would be Taka Michinoku.
I remember segments on Raw and stuff all the time, though, during this couple months, trying to push that light heavyweight title was him as a champion, flirting with Sunny. And I just remember skits with girls in it. I remember them trying to do that, and it never made sense to me. Look at the guy; he's a nerd.
Yeah.
But not a bad match, just a rush match and an injustice to what these two guys are probably capable of given more time. But it wasn't. Could have been worse.
Yeah, let's be unless you were a devotee of WCW in America, you didn't really see moves like this, every day in WWF. So I suppose back then it was a sort of novelty. As where now you could look at this match and just go, 10 more minutes of dives.
I'm always been an advocate too. I feel like bookers should always play to their strength and not. I don't feel like, cruiserweight, international talent was never Vince McMahon's strength. He just didn't know how to showcase this flat out. He didn't.
Have WWE ever really known how to showcase a cruiserweight division like properly? I'm
I,
not
I'm still blown
convinced that they
away.
have.
I'm still blown away because I go on Twitter. Maybe I was in a coma for like these 2 years. I see people praise Gregory Helms' title reign in like '06, and I'm like, I remember that being god fucking awful. Like, just the doldrums of the cruiserweight division. Maybe it's just me.
I mean, the only time I really enjoyed like the cruiserweight division in WWF was when Jamie Noble was champion in 2002. I thought he put on some really good matches with people, including the Hurricane. I think I've said this before a year or two ago at King of the Ring 2002. I think their cruiserweight title match there was outstanding, but apart from like that little period, no, I don't ever recall enjoying WWE's cruiserweight division.
It's a shame, too, because you could tell they were actually giving some thought in '02 to stack that division up with Ultimo Dragon, Chavo, Rey Mysterio, what could have been, but they just... Ultimo Dragon didn't really transition well. He didn't like living over here, so he bolted, and they just, and I get why they did it. Rey Mysterio had much more mainstream appeal than just cruiserweight division. That made sense. He was a human superhero for kids and blah, blah, blah. But other than that, what are you left with? Chavo, Gregory Helms. That's why.
It was almost like they were taking what WCW's cruiserweight division was, like wrestler by wrestler, but not being able to recreate what they did 10 years ago.
Yeah. And it's a shame, too, because this time, I mean, this was, the seeds of Ring of Honor, and they had some of the hottest cruiserweights in the world in Japan. And I mean, it was right under their nose, but God forbid. Up next, I'm pretty sure it's Gennifer Flowers and The Rock now, right?
It is, yes. And I did enjoy this, Travis. It's like her questions were absolute horseshit, but they were designed to make The Rock look like a prick.
So
he played up to that perfectly.
He did, and I just reviewed with my buddy Lori Wrestlemania 6 the other night, and to compare Rona Barrett sitting down with Miss Elizabeth to this, I'll take this any day. This was, in a way, watching this, I felt like this was a parody of that interview, because that one took itself so fucking serious with Rona Barrett and Miss Elizabeth, and it was so bad, and the acting was pitiful from Elizabeth. This was just straight up, you see a future star. You see the seeds being planted in just the character, the delivery. It was all connecting the dots with Rock now. Like, he was starting to get all that momentum at this point. It was just, everything was working.
Oh, absolutely. And you could see he was living that character. And, months before, he seemed lost forever, before the whole Nation of Domination thing came along. And the change in character, Travis, for like, a year and a few months beforehand, he was smiling Rocky Maivia. To this, just brilliant.
Is it fair to say that The Rock's character is the Ric Flair of late 90s, early 2000s? The $500 shirts. He was just... I feel like it works so much more than Ric Flair because it was a minority Ric Flair, and that just opens so many other branches for people to get behind, as opposed to this rich white man. You know what I mean? It is what it is.
Yeah, like this cocky young black guy who's like, look, I'm better than you in every way. I'm doing better than you. Look at my clothes. Look at my $1,000 shades. You can clearly see how much better I am than each and every one of you.
It's amazing what a fancy shirt and sunglasses can do for a guy, because literally he just had that look so much. He looked like a star in this ensemble. Like, he didn't even have to tell you. He if he didn't want to, I mean, you knew he was a star. It was so much better than where we were a year earlier.
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? If anything, it's like this was the character he was born to play. He didn't have to put any effort.
It's him
into this character as well. It is him, and as well. Watching Rocky Maivia, you felt like a lot of effort went into portraying that character every time he stepped in the ring.
Exactly. And it's so cliche and played out that they say in all their documentaries, but when you let the talent be themselves, you get The Rock, man. I mean, what more can you say? The Rock, for Christ's sakes.
Yeah.
This was good, though. And you know what? Gennifer Flowers, she didn't do great, but she didn't do bad. Shout out to her.
Yeah, I mean, they gave us shit material, but it was all geared towards making The Rock look like a dickhead. And it worked. And it was glorious.
And who was Gennifer Flowers, real quick, people may ask? She was a lounge singer who had an affair with President Bill Clinton at the time. There you go. For those that give a shit. That's why she's there. She's here for having an affair.
There you go.
It's amazing what you can get booked for.
It's like, I won't say it's the worst match on the card because there are some serious contenders for that title, but fuck, was it disappointing. You know, expected this, and bear in mind, like I said last week, I hadn't seen this for maybe 15 years, but I was expecting something much better than this, and I don't ever remember this match being this dull, but it was all played out towards the China Sergeant Slaughter storyline. You know, it revolved more around them than the championship. Owen Hart just looked like he'd rather be anywhere than in WWE.
Well, I mean,
just going through the motions.
That's pretty accurate because he wanted out of his contract and Vince wouldn't let him. So, I mean, you're right, technically.
Yeah. And you know what? You can tell it just affects the same wrestler or the same Owen Hart or even the same character after the Montreal Screwjob.
I feel like we were saying, umbrella statement for this, it was really disappointing. And on paper, you'd feel like, especially this year, it feels like Triple H wasn't in his prime yet, but he was definitely up and coming. But Owen was definitely in his prime in ring. It feels like it should have been a much bigger banger of a match, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, like Triple H was coming up, but I think that while he was on the ascent, I think Owen Hart was on the descent because of, you know, Montreal, and like he just stopped caring.
Yeah, 100%. It was talking about this is my least incarnation of Owen Hart. It always, this was the epitome of Owen phoning it in. It didn't seem like he was having any fun again until he rejoined the Nation a couple months later. It seemed like he was having a little bit better of a time with those guys.
Yeah.
Just, I mean, and that's not to say that meant he was happy with his booking position.
Situation, isn't it?
Exactly. That doesn't mean he was happy with his placement. Just means like, oh, he liked being around those guys. They made the best out of it, like you said.
Yeah. Yep, I totally agree. And I think, like I said at the beginning of this little segment, like this was all about China and Sergeant Slaughter. Like, especially for me, it wasn't about the European title. It wasn't about the little feud they had going on. This was just, you know, China, Sergeant Slaughter handcuffed together, and how would she get out to help Triple H win?
Yeah, finish. As disappointing as the match was, I actually liked the finish. It made sense for him as a heel character with China. Those people in the front row definitely got their money's worth when they ended up with Sergeant Slaughter in their lap. And she just hurled him over the barricade. My God.
She did. She threw him like he was fucking nothing.
It was brutal, man. It was brutal. Sarge definitely earned his paycheck that day, and that was it. This is also the debut of the crotch chop pyro, which we failed to mention, which was mind-blowing at the time. The crowd ate that shit up. Fair to say the crowd was behind Triple H way more than Owen in this match. He was just the cooler wrestler at the time. That's just the way the wind was blowing.
Yeah, agreed. And do you know what? Mention the crotch chop, but I would be lying if I said I wasn't bored of it already by the end of this pay-per-view after seeing how many times Mike Tyson did it on his intro.
Cone stoled. We'll get there. Up next, where are we at?
We are at a video package for the upcoming mixed tag team match, which shows us, I mean, at least in my opinion, you might think different, Travis, but it shows us how much they absolutely butchered the Goldust character.
A lot of these, you know, these one-offs on Raw doing these different gimmicks, I forgot he did them. Like, I forgot about the Marilyn Manson thing completely.
You did?
I did.
You wait till you download my Fire Pro version of Attitude Era Goldust. It'll all come flooding back to you.
Jesus God. But I, you know what? We're going to disagree because I feel like for the time, if they would have given it more forethought and had, you know, better just where they're going with it, I thought it was one of the better facelifts for a guy. It was like, at first he was androgynous and he was fucking weird. He was obviously the weirdest guy on the roster, but since everything else was getting turned up volume-wise, they needed to turn this up. And I feel like it made him stand out. I mean, obviously, but I'm not saying like an Undertaker kind of way, but this definitely made him, in my opinion, more of an attraction. He would get the IC title like a year later, but he should have been in an IC title picture around this time too. I would have booked it more serious.
I mean, if they'd booked it more serious, then possibly, but I just found it, like, coming across to me, it obviously, like, came across to us differently, but I just felt like they'd run out of ideas for him, so they just did whatever amused the most people backstage on that certain week. That's how it felt. It just felt like there's no clear path for him. There's no clear direction. For fuck's sake, they gave him Johnny B. Bad, let's be honest, on WrestleMania.
I was about to
I
say.
just felt there was no clear, there was no clear direction for him whatsoever.
I was about to say on the
And
other.
also, can I just say?
Yeah, go ahead. No, good.
I would say Luna Vachon's voice on that promo before the match. Like she could have played Rita Repulsa in Power Rangers. It was hideous.
Sable. Yeah, it was. Oof. Rest in peace. And I was going to say, speaking of, if you look up the word disheveled in the dictionary, you'll find 98 Mark Marrow in there waiting on you.
Yeah. I think he had the roughest end of the stick. It's like Goldust had his thing going on, whether people liked it or not. He was getting noticed, like you say. Luna, I think, felt lucky to be there. Sable, she was the star of this show, and then you had poor Mark Moreau just holding on to her coattails and hoping for the best.
And nobody kid yourselves at all back then to this day. This match was catered 100% to get one person over, and that's what it did. This was the first time we saw women, and of all people, Sable to be doing it, since Alundra Blaze, and even then, Alundra Blaze wasn't out there giving people like tiger bombs and shit like that. I mean, Sable brought it in this match, and nobody expected it to be this, and I think that's why the pop was so loud. We were just going off what we knew of mixed tag matches in history. What were the examples? You had Miss Elizabeth at 6 with Sapphire, none of that bullshit. You had some Beulah and ECW, which were bloodbaths and more or less brawls, but not this. And for all the people to do it, Sable, I gotta say, the booking of this was pretty genius, I gotta say, because people definitely reacted to that that roof came off that building the same as when Austin won the title later. You can't deny that watching this.
Oh, no, I totally agree. As far as booking Sable to look strong and playing up to the fans, it was perfect. I mean, the match was as dull as shit, but it was never meant or designed to be a great match. It was designed to get Sable over, and I think they missed a trick. And I'm not sure how long after WrestleMania this would happen, but they missed a trick by not turning her on Moreau there and then, and just having this match end with her powerbombing him like she would on Raw, whenever it was afterwards.
It would have put that proverbial cherry on the sundae, and there would see all that did was drag it out for another month when really it was just an evening gown match at Unforgiven a month later. So really, Mark Marrow really never really got booked again, except that one Raw against Sable, which was all right, I guess, for what it was.
Yeah, I mean, it was what it was. It did the job, but the reaction and the effect it would have had at WrestleMania, I think, would have propelled them even further into the stratosphere than she finally ended up.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, it's very clear to me that this probably would have gone off a lot more and go down to history and not glossed over as much if it was on a different woman. Sable didn't have the passion. She's one of the most arrogant people of all time backstage, apparently, according to legend. We saw where it went. She's a very dense performer. There wasn't a lot to work with after this. She was essentially the epitome of a one-trick pony, and that's why it never worked.
Yeah, and do you know what? I think if I'm casting my mind back, like now you're saying that, it's like by, I think it was Royal Rumble 99, which was less than a year later, like I had already had enough of her, like as women's champion, and just this attraction that to be, but she never actually was.
I'm sure at the time the paycheck was fucking awesome, and it probably made sense financially for her to pose for Playboy. But looking back, I think that was a huge mistake because you took that mystique away when she did that, and her popularity just dwindled. Because it's like, I hate to be as blatant about it, but it was the Attitude Era, teen demographic. When the teen boy sees the goods, it's all downhill from there. Let's be honest, and that's exactly what happened.
That's it. It's like I could pull a magazine out and look at all day, every day if I want to. So I have no use for her now on television.
There's a reason why to this day I still, in my head, think about Terry Runnels sometimes. Just let that sink in. That's exactly the reason.
Oh dear. Is that not the cringiest statement of the entire show?
What? Up next, speaking of cringe, was it
Let's move on, yeah.
was it Double J time?
It was Double J time.
In 98!
98, but this was proper Double J. This was my Jeff Jarrett.
Your Jeff.
The Tennessee swing. I love Jeff Jarrett. I love Jeff Jarrett's theme tune.
Do you know what's fantastic about Colonel Rob Parker / Tennessee Lee is that he's still active today as a manager in MLW.
Is he?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's amazing. Not to mention
He's
various
still
podcasts.
as good and as slimy as.
I mean, he doesn't have.
Is he now just
he's older. Yeah, he's older. He doesn't have that pep in his step, obviously, but he's not out there like Mick Foley in a promo. Like now, Mick Foley. It's not awful.
Yeah.
This was just.
Well, there you go.
This is just to showcase Gennifer Flowers, but I mean, at least it got Jeff Jarrett a payday for nothing.
Yep, and can I just say, it's like Jeff. Every time I hear Jeff Jarrett's theme tune, it takes me back to like the same place as when you hear Mr. Perfect's theme tune. It's just like, glory days.
Yep, that good old-fashioned feeling, Matt.
Yep. One we wouldn't actually get in the upcoming match, or at least I wouldn't.
This match never really did it for me, and I never really got what all the hype was. I mean, I've seen people that love this match. This is just transitional rock for me. I mean, that's all that these kind of matches translate to. It was what it was. He was finding that character still. Not that this thing in ring was bad, but I was never, even as a teen, a huge Shamrock guy, because once again, you have Steve Austin in the company, so why would you want two badass vigilantes to get behind? You didn't. He kind of, I hate to say it, Steve Austin canceled out a guy like Ken Shamrock.
Yes, I totally agree. I was going to say that before you did, but yeah, totally agree. I think the pop for Ken Shamrock was, there was nothing wrong with that. People, still sort of believed in him as a Intercontinental Champion guy. But, I feel like he took a spot that could have made him, a star under Austin, and they just terrible. And, we're probably going to get some people just on Twitter or in the comments below saying, it was a good match. It was, did a job. It did what it was designed to do, make Ken Shamrock look like a badass, etc. But this was shit.
The best parts were after the match.
This is the Intercontinental Championship match, even up to 2000, 2001, maybe beyond, was still a main attraction at WrestleMania. Maybe, skip WrestleMania 15 for that. But, the Intercontinental title was still a main attraction, and yet this was 7-8 minutes maybe of just utter rubbish.
These two guys
devalued the title slightly.
And I don't think either one of us are getting it either. They didn't have chemistry or they never had a good match. I think their match at King of the Ring 98 was much better than this. I've seen them had a better match than this.
Yes. Yeah, totally agree. I can't even describe to our audience what this match was like, because there were I don't even think I've written down any actual wrestling. A lot of Ken Shamrock domination. There was a lot of going up the ramp. There was a lot of distraction in this match, and that was it.
Yeah, a lot of nation, and really they were trying to tell too many stories with Farouk in it, and it tried to get too many people over. Even though it's only 3 people, 1, it's a title match, 2, it's 2 strong up-and-coming mid-card guys. You don't really need a whole lot of extra layers, and it's WrestleMania. Manias are meant to let the match tell the story, as opposed to a Raw where you're hotshot booking to get people to buy a pay-per-view, if that makes sense. The Farouk thing could have happened on Raw, I feel like, even.
I just felt like even though they built it on Raw with The Rock attacking Farouk with the chair, etc., I felt like the Farouk coming to The Rock's aid, then just to refuse to help him and walk away, that was redundant for me. It's like, if I was Farouk, would you have even gone down there just to go, nah, actually, and walk away?
Why even go out?
In the locker room and...
Up next, where did that take us to?
That took us to the WWF Tag Team Championship dumpster match.
Yes!
New Age Outlaws versus Cactus Jack and James Tully.
I Guilty pleasure. Guilty is charged. I still love this match to this day. This is as advertised. It's not supposed to be an in-ring classic. It did exactly what it told you it was going to do, and I think it exceeded my expectations at the time, especially Terry Funk at his age doing somersaults into the fucking dumpster. You seen footage of it, like the whole bruise went up his body from that spot, Matt.
Yes.
Insane.
Yeah, nasty bruise on his back. You could see it like right at the end when his shirt was ripped.
I still say this match sealed the deal for WWF wanting to put the Outlaws in DX. They were just so hot at the time, had so much momentum. Their personalities fit that group so much. It made too much sense not to do it.
Yeah, I totally agree. They were a perfect fit for DX, you know, to fall into the, let's say, the Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, Four Horsemen role. But, yeah, they had charisma. I'm not going to say they had it in the ring totally, because Billy Gunn I don't ever rate as a top wrestler. But, they did what they did. It worked, and I like this match better than I like any other dumpster match WWF ever held. I can't. Go on. I was just going to say, I can't. I don't know what the right word is. I can't say that I loved seeing Terry Funk in 1998 wrestle, but what he did manage to do was ample, I think.
I loved him. I loved that he was this age. I think that's what got him over for me, is the fact that he was this older guy out there hanging in. And, Mick Foley's character. Mick Foley's my all-time favorite wrestler, for anyone that doesn't know that. Of all time, there it is. And I don't think I've ever said that on the show. It's Mick Foley, hands down. But this may be the weirdest place for him, these next, 4 to 5 months of all time, his whole career. Just the roller coaster he went from booking-wise and position, just insane, where Mick Foley went 2 months after this.
And then wouldn't he enter a rivalry with Kane coming into the summer?
Yeah. And then somehow he'd become a babyface by the fall, and then the corporation thing for sympathy, and then off to the races by December. That amazing match with The Rock on Raw where Austin returned and interfered and Foley won the title, and then he was just made. But this, planting the seeds after this, the night after this, the Raw after this WrestleMania, they had a cage match, these two teams for the main event, and that's when DX formed, the very next night. But they started planting seeds with that, with Cactus Jack as Mick Foley cutting promos as you chanted another guy's name. The crowd chanted Austin's name to come help him, and he never did. Okay, so, yeah, Mick Foley, there was tons of seeds being planted. I think there were some just in this match, too, just being planted. And that's how much forethought I think Patterson and McMahon had booking like this, and Pritchard. Just they saw ahead a lot in Russo.
Yeah, I agree. I can't say much more about this match or the entire rivalry, but I totally agree. On Mick Foley, it's he was going to do Love shortly after this, I believe, him and Austin with the tag team titles, and then the heel turn on Austin, and it was a grey area for Mick Foley's career, I think. In 98,
really was. That's the year that changed everything. Of course, the infamous Hell in a Cell. About 2 months after this?
June was it? June, July 98. So 2 to 3 months.
Crazy to think where he was going. And you know what? The build to this match on Raw was fantastic too, with the Outlaws pushing them off the stage. I mean, in the dumpster. That was, it still holds up. I love that.
Yeah. I think that's in my top 10 favorite moments of Raw, ever.
And I've done a Billy Gunn video on the channel, a little mini doc, Hibiki Honors, and I've talked about it ad nauseum. But it's got to be addressed again at just how they turned it around, the New Age Outlaws.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I never rated Billy Gunn, even in the New Age Outlaws or Smoking Guns, etc. as a wrestler. But together with Road Dogg, there was something. I think Road Dogg was a better wrestler, but together they had that charisma that just made it work.
And new champs, and the place exploded, and the finish using a forklift, and it was creative, and it was the Attitude Era in a nutshell.
Yeah, I agree. Placing the forklift on top of the dumpsters they couldn't get out, and very good. I think this was probably second second favourite match of the entire show.
Yeah, I agree. The main event and this, hands down. That's all you really need.
Yeah, agreed. That's it. This was a 2-match WrestleMania, sadly.
The light heavyweight title match, like we were saying, it was fine.
I mean, it was fine, but it was no spectacle. At least with this dumpster match, I felt like, it was at least a WrestleMania spectacle. You could see a light heavyweight title match on an In Your House or on a Raw, but a dumpster match, it's like it had the WrestleMania feel to it. It was like it was made to be on WrestleMania.
That is exactly the next match. Spectacle, made to be on a WrestleMania. Maybe, arguably, the greatest cheesy storyline this company's ever done that worked was Kane and the Undertaker.
You thought it was cheesy? I really liked the lead up to it. I like the whole.
I can do without Kane.
I
can do without Kane shooting lightning bolts. If you take that kind of shit out, then you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, lightning bolts was a bit much, but the way they debuted him in Your House, Bad Blood was like
incredible.
The proper way to get someone over. I think that was the highest this feud ever got in terms of quality. It was a bit downhill after that, not too much. I liked it, the whole getting them to WrestleMania without really touching each other, etc. But I think his debut was like the summit, and they did the best they could for the next 4 or 5 months maybe to get them to where they needed to be.
I still say this match should have just been null and void, and the Inferno match the next month should have been this match for Mania. Because I like the Inferno match. That's the only Inferno match I like, by the way. I think they've had 2, but still.
And plus the stipulation is like, Inferno match, why don't keep it for a B-level pay-per-view? Put it on WrestleMania. Make it memorable. Because the match itself wasn't that memorable. And it was slow. It was ploddy. It was.
I've heard Bruce Pritchard's argument on that as to why they put it on Unforgiven on something to wrestle with, and as well, got to sell tickets for the next one. My argument is, you had Steve Austin on your show. You didn't need anything like that to sell tickets. You were going to do it hands down. These are all-time records right here. They're setting because of Steve Austin. Let's say it.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I feel like most people would have felt cheated after Unforgiven, after seeing the Inferno match, and that could have been on WrestleMania. Why didn't you give us all the quality you had at WrestleMania? Because Inferno match or not, Unforgiven really, wasn't as good as WrestleMania 14.
Yeah. This match, I think the biggest problem, and I've thought about this, especially watching this match for this show, I think the biggest problem with Undertaker during these years, with pretty much every one of his WrestleMania appearances, the only one that really went off without a hitch for me was against Jake Roberts. It's because they put it on so early in the card. If this would have gone on like match 3, they would have had so much more steam from the crowd.
I can't disagree with that either. I also think that Glenn Jacobs was as stiff as fuck still. He'd been through the Isaac Yankem stage, the fake Diesel stage, etc. But he was still so stiff and green in the ring. And I don't think it helped that the Undertaker had to lead him around by the hand.
And I don't think it helped either that essentially they just turned Kane fucking babyface 30 seconds before this match for the Boston fans by attacking Pete Rose, and the people ate that shit up. All they did right there is just confuse the casual fans. Like, well, who do we cheer now? Is he a good guy now? And that just killed the match.
Exactly.
I don't get me wrong. Exactly. I fucking love the Pete Rose appearances. Every one of them at WrestleMania. Another guilty pleasure, but I still think it killed this match. I got to be honest. Can't lie to you guys.
Do you know what? I think it was a mixture of that and the fact that WrestleMania was basically winding down by the time this match came on.
Yeah.
And people were waiting for Austin now.
Plus, the biggest elephant in the room, and we talked about the build to this and how it may be one of the very best they've ever done. There's no way these guys could live up to that fucking build. Not after lightning bolts. I'm sorry. You can't go out there and grab a headlock, pal, and convince these people that this is amazing.
Yeah.
The dive was fantastic, where Kane moved out of the way, and it was kind of a little botch, but I feel like that's a case of where the botch made it better.
Yes. And again, agreed. I think this would have been 10 times better had it either been an Inferno match, like we said earlier, or had it been fought under some sort of no disqualification rule where they could have used a distraction of weapons and whatever else they needed. Because this match was largely,
rules.
I didn't time it, but it was largely fought in the ring as a standard wrestling match.
I thought you were going to say this match was largely rules, and it really was. Was it Hebner or one of the refs just yelling at the guys like, come on, break it up. No, this is a blood feud. This is a comic book feud come to life. We're not doing 5 counts to break holds.
And you know what? It suffered from what we've said. I'll start that again. It suffered from what we've talked about on previous episodes. It's like when you've had this big blood feud, and then they get in there and they trade headlocks. And no, you go after each other. You try and rip each other apart for what you've done to each other for the last 4 to 5 months.
I could have swore that's what Cody and MJF were going to do at Revolution, that they were going to go out there. And I was just waiting on them to, you'd go into it and wait for the introduction. But no, shout out to Cody. He at least went in there and attacked him. So I was like, well, thank God they treated it like it was a serious fucking feud for once in wrestling. That's one of my biggest pet peeves watching any era of wrestling when it's supposed to be a blood feud. And I know you're with me.
Yes. Yeah, again, totally agree. We're agreeing on almost everything tonight. I bet it's annoying for the people listening. But no, you're right.
You guys want us to argue about something? Is that what you want? You really want that? I don't want to argue with that.
They want conflict, Travis. Undertaker should have gone in there with a chair or some type of weapon and just leathered the shit out of Kane, and then had Kane make a comeback. I will say, throughout all the moaning we've done about the match, I did like the story of it, that he had to literally throw everything at Kane
3 tombstones
to put him down.
Yeah, it took 3.
3 tombstones, flying clotheslines, like absolutely almost everything in his arsenal. Well, his 98 arsenal anyway.
This match,
what I didn't like...
This kind of reminded me of watching these Raws lately in front of no crowd.
I mean, I haven't seen them, so I can't comment on that, but it did feel like a by the numbers thing.
That may be the greatest entrance of WrestleMania history, in my opinion. This shot, the way it was done, it was the first time like this with the torches and the druids. It's amazing. It really is an amazing shot. Shout out to Kevin Dunn and all those guys that produced this Undertaker entrance.
Yep, I agree. The druids, everything. The only thing I didn't really like about the Undertaker's entrance was his face. He looked like he didn't really care. I didn't get a lot of character from him.
What did you think of
it?
What'd you think of the Spawn thing? That's what I call it. The Spawn thing behind his head that he only busted out for certain occasions, like SummerSlam.
I quite liked it because it looked like anyone who watches Doctor Who will know what I'm talking about, but it looked like the Time Lord collar that Doctor Who's people wear. So I'm all right with that. It was very sci-fi.
You just wanted the chance to bring up Doctor Who. Don't lie. Don't lie to the people and the listeners. You just wanted the chance to bring up Doctor Who. Don't lie to the people.
You know me so well.
But it's definitely probably their worst match they had, fair to say. I mean, the one at Mania 20 wasn't exactly a classic either. Yeah, Taker and Kane at 20 might be worse than this one.
I mean, I would agree with that because they both looked out of shape at 20. There was no real story either, like match-wise. There was a story going in, but I felt this told a better story in match than it did at 20, but than it did action-wise, if you get what I'm saying.
And there you go, another wound you carry, a bad match to the Undertaker. I know it breaks your heart every time we got to review one of those.
It does. And do you know where people can read more about this, Travis?
I don't know. Where is that, Matt?
In my book, The Undertaker, Truck Down Death Valley, available from CompletelyNovel.com.
There you go, guys. Get over there. Get a bunch of copies. They're tough times right now for everyone. Main event time. One of the best main events, I still say. Talk about making a guy. This was tailor-made to... This was passing of the torch. The epitome of the phrase passing of the torch. You could see it. You could feel it. You could just... Everything about it, all signs pointed to Steve Austin was carrying the load from the tremendous shot before the match of Austin and Michaels walking backstage. You could feel that crowd brewing, ready for Steve Austin to come out. What heat DX had in this.
Yeah, I mean, like the heat that DX had, the love for Austin, the build, Travis, as well, before WrestleMania. This was... I'm going to say this was probably one of the best WrestleMania main events, like overall, for everything, not just in ring, but for everything that there was. Because you're building Austin to the championship. You're also at the same time pulling Shawn Michaels away from the business completely, and then underneath all that, you're establishing a new faction who will. Eventually war with Austin and Taker and all them. I think so many things came together in this that weren't just Austin winning the championship that made this special, looking back on it.
Yeah, this match and this build to this match kind of changed everything from where the company would go, from the poster boy to the undercard. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what? Yeah, I felt sorry for Shawn Michaels as well watching this match, like knowing that this was it. Like he's walking down that aisle and he's got the character and he's got the swagger and his back is obviously like it's killing him. But knowing that you're walking that aisle, for all he knew for the last time, to put your replacement over, it's like that must have like broke him.
And it's also really sad knowing that the only way he could go out there at all with the state his back was at the time was to be smacked off his tits. And you can see it that he's on a lot of pills to get through this match. And you know what? I've seen a lot of people bury this match over the years and say it sucked. Every time I go back and watch this, I'm still waiting to find the bad match. I don't think this is a bad match at all, especially considering the state of one of the guys.
Yeah. And you know what? He might have been smacked off his tits. He might have been coked up to the eyeballs, pilled up, whatever. And I've heard stories that obviously, we've all heard them that he was a massive prick backstage.
Yeah.
At this point, Shawn Michaels.
Karma came a calling is what this was too.
He worked like a star. Yeah, but he worked like a star, Travis, in this match. It's like I've heard, and I watched his biography. I think it was Heartbreak and Triumph.
Yep.
The box set. I've got it upstairs. And I think on it he talks about the WrestleMania 14 main event, and he says that his biggest regret is that he wasn't focused on, making Steve Austin a star, and he didn't feel like he did everything he could to help him get there. But I disagree. Looking at this match, absolutely, disagree. He sold perfectly. He went out there and he made Austin, or he helped Austin, become an absolute bona fide main event star.
He let a non-wrestler knock him out.
Yes, yeah. He took bumps that a man with, back problems like that should never have been taken.
Exactly.
They weren't easy to watch, and he didn't really need any selling because I'm sure all that pain was real.
Every time I go back and watch this and you see him take that flare spot in the corner, you know what I'm talking about, where they do the flip into the corner. Because he can't nail it, and he lands like right on his back because he mistimes it. You can feel it. This is one of those matches, just like Hell in a Cell we talked about earlier with Mick Foley. You can feel their pain watching this. Every time, about halfway through the match, Shawn Michaels starts doing any hold, he always grabs his back and his face. You can just feel it.
Yeah, yeah. And do you know what? People can say what they like about Shawn Michaels, but he did the job asked of him. He did what Bret Hart did for him 2 years previous at WrestleMania 12, and he was a champion to the very end, at least for me.
This match also doesn't get talked about, and it should, as Vince took as much of a chance on this as he did with WrestleMania 1, as the amount of money to get Mike Tyson. Because if it would have flopped, he took it, because the company was already in the shit state competing with Nitro. They almost went out of business in '97, for Christ's sakes. He took a risk, it paid off, because the Mike Tyson mainstream stuff with Austin and Raw, which everybody's talked about a million times, we all know that was the true harbinger to this. You know what I mean? It just, timing was perfect for everything. With the Evander Holyfield ordeal, biting his ear off, it all worked. Vince McMahon is so lucky to pull this off, and he did, and you know where we went after this with the Attitude Era.
Indeed. And it all came, it's fascinating to look back on, track, because as shit as the Attitude Era was sometimes, and we've discussed this when we first started this podcast, like the Attitude Era was absolute bollocks in some places.
Yeah.
It wasn't all perfect like people want to believe it was, but it all spawned from basically from this match onwards.
I think that's the one positive I've seen come from the IWC, the Internet Wrestling community, over the past couple of years, that finally people are starting to just admit that, and you don't see as much, the Attitude Era was perfect praise anymore. Now I think it's Cody and the Young Bucks can do no wrong. That's the biggest plague in wrestling fans right now, is that mindset. I think it's all shifted to that. I think everyone's pretty much seeing now that a lot of the Attitude Era fucking sucked. Let's just say it.
Yeah.
Draws the tattoo guy and his dick-pierced buddy, Prince Albert, is just an example of how great the Attitude Era was. I don't know why that came to my mind first, but I just, Attitude Era.
Can I just say, I also liked how you basically said, but without saying it, that AEW fans were the plague of the internet wrestling community.
You know what? People don't listen to us because we bullshit them. I'll say that. And people know it is what it is. Even the ones that are guilty of being that biased, you know what you're doing. It's fine. You're fed up with WWE and the corporate environment and bullshit wrestling. I get it, but your credibility also sometimes has to come into play, and just remember before you tweet, or think before you tweet, I should say. Because, God, it's cringe. So many of you are just so blatantly cringe anymore to get yourselves over without just looking at simple facts. And that didn't mean to turn into a rant, but it did.
And that's why we have this platform.
Got into it today with the New Day and the Young Bucks, who's the best tag team in the past decade. If you don't see it's the New Day, hands down, I don't even know why you bother getting into wrestling debates, because you're obviously not equipped to win any of them. There it is. But that was Mania 14. Go ahead, Matt.
I was just going to say, it makes me hurt inside that people would think the Young Bucks are the greatest tag team of the decade.
Well, I hope you're ready for a lot of hurting the next time you get on social media. Because I'm sore as hell from being on it today alone. What did you grade Mania 14? One of my guilty pleasure Manias, man. I'll tell you right now, I'll grade this a B+. There's a lot of feel-good moments on this, a lot of memories. There was some shit. Shamrock and Rock wasn't the best. The Battle Royal was a bunch of turds, let's be honest. But,
I mean, even though it was basically a two-match show, the main event and the dumpster match, everything else surrounding the big matches, like Taker and Kane, the storylines made it feel special. So I'm going to give this a B.
Wow. That's really, I thought you were going to give it a C. I thought you were going to hate this show. I'm really surprised. Pleasantly surprised.
Do you know what, the thing is that I wasn't a huge fan of the show, per se. It was more what it meant for, the history of professional wrestling. And obviously, it was geared towards making Steve Austin. Like, everything else was just a nice distraction to fill 2.5 to 3 hours. You know, the main reason was we have to make this work. You know, the whole company could depend on this main event being successful. And I think Austin did Vince McMahon proud. I think Shawn Michaels played a part that many people have never given him credit for. And I think it was a riotous success.
It was a WrestleMania that ended absolutely perfectly, I feel like.
Agreed.
And we both put our tweets out this week. This match, the main event, is both in our top 5 all-time Manias. Different placements, but it's still in there.
Yes, it is. I just think it's like we said. Like, you know, I'm not going to do another 20 minutes on it, but everything was perfect about the match. Everything was perfect going into the match, and you know that you can pinpoint this as being where the Attitude Era took off. Not began, because it was there a few months before, end of '97 into beginning of '98, etc.
But this is like after you really ordered something off Amazon, right? And you know it's coming. This is like when the package finally shows up, when Austin finally won that belt. Because this was like one of those times where I feel like everyone collectively was waiting on a guy to get that belt so badly. It was like Taker and Austin were those two guys I remember having that feeling for. Taker properly, by the way, not the Hulk Hogan Tuesday in Texas.
Out of this we'd get just so much great material to offset the bad.
Are you still in the camp of I shudder to think where it would have gone without Vince McMahon to play off of for Steve Austin?
Yes, because someone would have had to step into that role. Shawn Michaels was gone after this, so it couldn't have been him. Triple H wasn't ready. I mean, I'm sure they'd have tried it if there was no one else. Undertaker was starting to lag, hideously, and pick up injuries to the point where he would have to take time off a year and a bit later.
And Mick Foley could only get you so far in any era. Let's be honest. As much as I love Mick.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I'm with you. Vince McMahon was needed.
Exactly. So you could make the argument that maybe The Rock could have stepped in and we'd have had a 3-year feud between The Rock and Austin. But I think Vince McMahon, for all his faults, and he's got plenty of them, Travis, Vince McMahon made this feud. And he sort of helped carry his own business.
Plus, let's be totally honest, as talented as The Rock is and was and has always been, he wasn't that true next level heel until Vince McMahon made him in the corporation. Because we saw what he was going on his own steam without Vince McMahon. It would have been this, and it would have been, let's skip this match. Without Vince McMahon in the corporation, it put The Rock as like their Ric Flair, if that makes sense. My opinion.
Yeah, it does, completely. No, you're right, completely.
Completely. It is completely done. We finally did it. 2 nights worth of trying tech issues aside. We hope you guys bear with us, and we try to give you the best possible episode, and we hope we did that for you guys. Hope you love going down as Mania Week continues right here on the channel on the road to an empty WrestleMania. Man, that's depressing. Matt, making me undepressed and tell me where everyone can pick up some of our sweet merch.
You can pick up our sweet merch from our online store, unionsmack.bigcar. We're going to add some more at some point in the next few months, possibly, depending on what we can do or when we can get it done. You can pick up my Undertaker book, A Trip Down Death Valley, from completelynovel.com. And just look out on the channel. Tenant Talks Issue 8 will be coming shortly. I've got a few things to do in play. NXT UK episode 87 review is coming your way shortly. And yeah, we've got you covered for quarantine season.
As always, unionsmack.bigcartel.com. Get over there, get a shirt, get a book, get it now. As always on Twitter at @DHibikitMD, that red button right down below. Hit it now, subscribe for all the nerdy goodness. Until next time, Union Smack. Cheerio, mates.